Now we are all set to implement PKCE authorization code grant flow inside our Angular application so that it can interact with the KeyCloak server to get the authorization code access token, and by using that access token my Angular application can interact with my backend resource server to get the resource details. As we discussed in the previous lecture, in the PKCE method the client application has to generate code verifier and code challenge, and this has to be generated in a cryptographical manner so that my KeyCloak server can use both of them to validate cryptographically in order to pass authorization code and access token to the client applications. But this all sounds like a very complicated process, but it is not. The reason is we don't have to do all this code verifier, code challenge generation manually by writing the code. There are already enough libraries available in order to do that. Coming to Angular library, we have a library called KeyCloak Angular. Like you can see, this package supports Angular and KeyCloak integration by providing out-of-box features like it will only generate internally code verifier, code challenge for you, and it will take care of interacting with the KeyCloak server without the need of lot of coding from the developer. So this page has clear instructions what this library does and how to install that inside your Angular application. So in order to install inside your Angular application, we have to run this command, which is npm install keycloak-angular space keycloak-js. So once you run this command, you will get all the libraries that you needed for your Angular application to integrate with the KeyCloak server. Post that, this page also has clear explanation what kind of setup you have to do inside your Angular app in order to leverage this KeyCloak Angular library. So now coming to our Angular application, the very first change that I have done is like mentioned in the official library page. First, I have to import app initializer from the Angular core. Post that, I should import two classes, which is KeyCloak Angular module and KeyCloak service from the KeyCloak Angular library. Once that is imported, this is the very crucial function that I need to write, which is initialize KeyCloak. So for that I need to pass KeyCloak service as an argument. So here you can see we are passing all the details of KeyCloak, like what is the base URL of my KeyCloak, which is http localhost 8080/auth, and what is my real name, which is EazyBank dev, and what is the client ID, which is easy public client. You can see here I'm not passing any client secret, I'm only passing client ID. And under the init options, we have a PKCE method approach, which is S256, and this has to match with what we choose on the KeyCloak server. And coming to redirect URI, also we should make sure the redirect URI is matching with what we configured in the KeyCloak server, which is /dashboard. And we should also mention load user profile at startup to false. If you set this to true, by default, without any action from the user, the very first page that will be landed will be the login page. But I don't want that to happen until unless the user click on the login action. So due to that, I mentioned this property as false. So don't worry if you don't understand all this Angular related stuff, but this is just an knowledge that I want to provide. So in future, if you are building an web application based upon jQuery or Angular, React, any other library, you know that what is the process, and based upon the language that you are working, you can always search for corresponding libraries that support KeyCloak integration and follow this approach. So I'll also attach all this Angular code to this video for your reference. So most of this application is very similar to what we are discussing in the previous lectures and sections of this course. So I just made some changes to integrate with the KeyCloak auth server by leveraging the KeyCloak Angular library. So once we write this function initialize KeyCloak, we should come to the ng module declaration. So here Under the imports, we should make sure we are importing KeyCloak Angular module. And coming to providers, we should declare the providers like provide is equal to app initializer and what is a factory that we want to initialize, which is initialize KeyCloak method that we defined in the top. And dependencies is KeyCloak service and multi is equal to true. So these configurations you have to provide. So once this basic configuration is done in the appmod.ts, the very next file that I want to show you is header component.html. So in order to understand this header.component.html, let me show you the UI page of this Angular application. So it is pretty much similar except that I removed the sign in page because first I want to show to the user what is the home page, and when he click on the login page, he has to be redirected to the KeyCloak login page. So due to that reason, I have some good home page, and whatever you see in the top is coming from the header.html. So there is a home, login, contact us, notices, dashboard and logout. So few tabs like dashboard, logout will be shown only if the user is authenticated by looking at the auth status variable is equal to auth. If the user is not logged in, we will show home, login, contact us, notices. So if you see here, for login on click, I mentioned it has to invoke the login method. Similarly, for logout, it has to invoke on click logout method. So where do I define these methods is inside the component of header. Like you just have to look for the header component.ts. Here you can see first I have to import the classes from the KeyCloak Angular, which is KeyCloak service and KeyCloak profile. So here under login, I just have to invoke the login method of KeyCloak service provided from the library. So these internally take care of everything like getting an authorization code from the KeyCloak server by passing the code challenge. And once I get the authorization code, it will also pass the code verifier so that my KeyCloak server can give an access token. So all this will happen inside the library when you call the login method. Similarly, if you want to log out, you just have to invoke the logout method. And the next important file that I want to show you is the routing configurations that I have done. Like if you see, by default, the home page will be shown to the user. Like if someone try to interact to my application without giving any path, like just simple localhost 4200, then by default homepage will display, and every path has its own component defined. And you can see certain paths like dashboard, my account, my balance, my loans, my cards. These are all protected paths which are protected by using a class called authKeyCloak. And here I am also having role-based access, like dashboard can be viewed by someone who have role like users and admin. And of course, someone can fool my UI application by changing this code. But since I have a second level check in the backend also, it should not be a problem even someone changes that. So this kind of role-based code on the UI at least will reduce some burden on the backend server to not pass the requests which are not pass the role-based access mechanism. So let's try to go and see what is present in the authKeyCloak. So this is again a custom class that I have written by extending the KeyCloak auth. So KeyCloak auth, which is from the library, again provides some out of the box features, like it will hold the information like whether the user is authenticated, and it will also hold the user profile details once the user is authenticated. So you can see here, whenever a person is trying to access a protected page or protected path, this guard will invoke, and here you can see first we'll check whether the user is authenticated. If not, show him the login page. Else, if the user is authenticated, we will set the auth status variable to auth so that our header component will use that to display corresponding tabs. And similarly, we'll also get the first name and email details of the user from the user profile that is provided by my KeyCloak Angular library. So those details I will store inside an user and set it into a session storage so that I can use them in the other components and other places of the application. And this is the place where we do role-based check. Like you can see first, what roles this route should accept, I'll get from route.data.roles. Like if a user trying to access a /dashboard path, I will get all the roles required for that path, and that can be present inside these required roles. And at the same time, if the required roles is empty, which means the path does not have any role-based mechanism, I can simply return true. But if the required roles has some roles, I will check at least one of the role should match with the roles that I'm getting from the KeyCloak server. So this dot roles is coming from the KeyCloak auth. So if you click on this dot roles here, you can see this is coming from the library file, which is KeyCloak auth.ts. So this way, KeyCloak Angular library provides all the out-of-the-box features, and in fact you don't need any interceptor also to pass that access token every time to the resource server in the backend, because the library will take care of it internally. So now we discussed all the important changes that we have done inside this Angular application. But don't worry, if you don't have knowledge on Angular, please ignore it. Please understand only the concept that I'm trying to explain here. But if you are an expert on Angular, try to download the code that I'm attaching to this video and explore how that integration between KeyCloak, Angular application and resource server is happening. So now I have started this Angular application. You can see EazyBank, this is the home page, and I'm clicking contact us, notices. Notices we are able to see, the reason is notices in the backend we put it as permit all. Now I'll click on login. So you can see here it is redirecting me to the login page of KeyCloak server. So here I just have to enter accounts 1 2 3 4 5 and I'm entering sign in. So it redirected me back to the dashboard, but unfortunately I'm not able to see any output on my page. Let's try to go and see what is happening by going to the console. So here it is clearly showing it's an cars issue. So we are trying to redirect from a port of 8080 to 4200, which is a different port, different origin. So due to that, we are getting a cars issue. So how to resolve this cars issue? Let's go to the KeyCloak admin console, go to the client that we have created for Angular app, which is Easy Public Client. So here if you scroll down under web origins, you can mention valid origins that KeyCloak should consider and browsers should consider, so that the communication between two different applications like KeyCloak to Angular application will be allowed by browser. So you can see here if we mention plus, it will allow all kind of origins. Otherwise we can mention the exact origin also. For now, for our testing, I'm just mentioning plus. So once you mention the plus, click on save. Now I'll try to go and open the page again. So I'm clicking login. You can see since I already logged in last time, that cookie is available inside my browser. It is not asking me to log in again. The login operation is successful and I am able to see the dashboard. So if you click on logout, the logout will happen and it will show the login page. So I'm just trying to again log in, accounts 1 2 3 4 5. You can see here the client ID is there, redirect URI is there, code challenge method is there, code challenge is there. So all these values are getting from the KeyCloak Angular library. I didn't write any code to do that. So now you can see it landed onto the dashboard page. So now I'll try to click accounts. So it make an call to the backend and getting the response. Similarly for balance, loans and cards. So now let's try to remove the role and see how the UI behaves. For the user accounts, I'm removing the roles that this user has. Both I'm removing admin and user. So now if I try to log in again, This time my UI itself should catch that and should not display anything to me. So you can see here there are no errors, but still I'm not able to see the page. The reason is I don't have enough roles to view that page. So let me add back those roles. Once the roles are added, let's try to log in again. So here you can see now I'm getting a proper dashboard because I have access to it. So this way you can also have role-based mechanism controlled on the Angular side as well. But the key point that I want you to consider is that whenever you are trying to have a client application interacting with a resource server, it is very important to follow authorization code flow with the PKCE method instead of exposing your client secret and client details to everyone. So with this, we are clear how to implement OAuth2 framework even in the scenarios where web UI application trying to interact with a resource server staying on the backend. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.